What is the first evil? What is the original sin? Well, if you're raised in a Christian environment, or probably if you live in the West at all, you've heard the story of the fall from grace, the Garden of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I know I was told that story many times as a child, and of course, as an adult, I became even more familiar with it. Now, it would seem that the premise there is that the forbidden fruit was evil, and Adam and Eve succumbed to temptation there. The lesson generally being that we should avoid temptation, and that temptation leads to sin. And yet, when you look a little bit deeper into the story, that's not necessarily the message we would take away. Because it was, after all, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It seems a bit strange to suggest that we should not want to partake of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That we should not seek enlightenment, that we should not seek wisdom. And it's also interesting in that Bible story that Adam and Eve were not falling ill from eating the fruit. They weren't in some way done harm as far as the story goes. The fruit is implied to be something they shouldn't eat, and yet there's nothing that says they ate the fruit and then they started to develop rashes or some sort of a reaction. It wasn't like that. No. It was that there was a walled garden that God had made, which he was the superintendent of. And Adam and Eve were the caretakers of that garden. It was said that God would walk with them in the evening in the Garden of Eden. But after that whole incident with the forbidden fruit, Adam and Eve were cast out of that walled garden where they had abundance and its implied immortality. And they were cast into the outer world as a punishment for their sin. So you see, the real story is that the garden was a safe prison, a place they could not leave. But if they dared to do something which was out of bounds, if they dared to ask too many questions, then they would be cast out. So you see, the story of the Garden of Eden is not really a story about temptation as much as it is a tale about control. And at the core of the human experience, there is a desire to control. When that same impulse is harnessed for the purpose of creativity, then we see the best within us come out. But when we use our ingenuity for the purpose of controlling others, then the worst of us comes out. Maybe it's a guild in a video game that's just a bit too hardcore. Maybe it's a fan base in a community that's a little bit too toxic or too entrenched in their idea of what good looks like. Maybe it's someone who's grinding just a little bit too hard in their career. So hard, in fact, that they're more interested in themselves than in others, or more interested in always being in control than in giving other people a voice. Maybe it's the toxic element of someone who rules their household with an iron fist, says, I'm the husband, or I'm the dad, or whatever it might be. Therefore, it's my way or the highway. It's that desire to show love by saying, I will protect you, I will give you a walled garden, which is safe. But if you don't do what I tell you to do, if you don't do what I want you to do, if you challenge me in any way, if you seek to ask too many questions, then I will throw you out and make you suffer. That attitude appears in many different applications in our lives. The desire to control others instead of seeking knowledge and paths to creativity in our lives. Sometimes it's good to let go of things a little bit. It's good to wish people well, regardless of whether they align with you or not. And if you want to be a good friend, if you want to have quality relationships in your life, it's extremely important that you stop trying to figure out how you can be more in control. And instead, invest in the liberty, the freedom of empowering other people, physically, materially, and spiritually. You'd be surprised how much good can come from a true willingness to be understanding, instead of trying to bear all of your burdens on your own shoulders while you deprive others of autonomy and voice. Finally, since it really is not appropriate for us to say that the path to solving the problem of other people being controlling is to control them in return, learn to distance yourself respectfully from people who always pivot the conversation toward manipulation and control. And there's a lot of people that way. And they don't mean bad. They don't mean to do harm. But the end result is, if you give them power or control or influence in your life, they will do you no good. So learn to emancipate yourself from them. And understand that sometimes, even with all of its mortality, its risk, its savagery, its humiliation, frustration, and sorrow, the outer world, free from the walled gardens that come with quiet chains of control, sometimes are better. The gods, it was said, were immortal. They did not enjoy their immortality because they learned that when you can do no wrong and you cannot die, the thrill, the meaning, the context of life become less. Because what is the virtue of doing what is right if it's impossible for you to make the choice to do what is wrong? And what is the purpose of seeking progress in life if you do not also know that you will die? Sometimes we can have a full and wonderful life without living in someone else's walled garden. As always, best of luck to you wherever you find yourself on your adventure, in game or in life. Till next time, thank you for watching.